Welcome. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Art. I'll be your presenter tonight. So I'm going to be presenting about step functions and how we use it to ingest PDF invoices. So I think you may be. It's not the usual venue downtown. So normally the tools and programming is downtown. So you're now in the offices of Fergus. So before we start, I'm gonna talk about I'll do some introductions on who we are and about me. So Fergus, who is Fergus? So I don't know if anyone knows Fergus. We've been we've been mistaken as a vet from startup because of the logo. No, but we're actually a SaaS company we have a job management application for tradies. So we are the most loved job management software for tradies. And about me, I'm Arthur Nelson D, and for short, you can call me Art. I'm one of the senior engineers at Fergus, and I've been here for like 3 years, and I belong to the squad called, we call it now Unlock Partnerships, but it's all about integrations. So we do integrations with third-party systems. So that's why we have this presentation now, because we've been ingesting PDF invoices from suppliers. So to start, what's our agenda for today? So I'll start off with a problem overview. So why do we want to ingest PDF invoices? And then the design considerations that we did. Then why we use step functions in the end, and then some small demo on step functions. So to start with, so in the trading industry, the traders rely heavily on sourcing their materials from suppliers. So at the very least, in the form of integrating with the invoices, comes a long way with their simplifying the process. So ingesting ingesting the supplier invoices is one of the key acquisition drivers of the Fergus platform. So from the start, actually, like 10 years ago when we launched the application, we already did ingesting. We were already doing ingestion of invoices, but in the form of CSV formatted invoices. So CSVs are very easy to work with. They've got fixed columns, predictable rows, so it's easy to parse and validate. But PDFs, if you've been working with PDFs before, you'll know that they're different beasts. They're hard to parse. They're a nightmare to read. They've got like no industry standard protocol. So, but in the industry, PDF invoices are the preferred format of the suppliers. So you might ask, so why only now? So why do we start using PDF? Why now we ingest PDF? Why not from the start? So as I've said, it's hard to parse in PDF. So it's really time consuming to implement something, and it just breaks for every other PDF. But if you remember, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, machine learning services started to being offered on the different cloud platforms. So I think around 2020, AWS offered Amazon TextTrack and Google Document AI machine learning services to analyze documents. So from that, we've started to look into to extend our ingestion to PDF invoices. So and so eventually we after some cost and benefit analysis, we used Amazon TextTrack. So a little bit of overview on Amazon TextTrack. So Amazon TextTrack is the document analysis service offered by AWS. So it's been there for since 2020, I think, and it offers also a set of APIs for specific to expense documents. So it fits very well for our use case, which are the supplier invoices. So the the analyze expense API contains all the known fields that we are now using when we were ingesting supplier invoices. So it fits very well with our use case, and being Fergus now mainly using AWS for our cloud infra, so it's kind of like a, it fits well with our infra. So moving on, so the technology considerations or the design considerations. So first of all, we already decided to use Amazon Textract. So we wanted something that would easily integrate with Amazon Textract. Amazon Textract acts actually an async service when you use PDF. So we need to think of something that will we can easily do async requests to the expense document analyzer service. Then we wanted it to be observable, highly scalable, so all the things that you want in production. Ease of development, so SRP, so we wanted all the functions to be self-contained, loosely coupled. Went back, and then all those things. We want it to be durable, so it saves all this. It saves all the information. It is easily auditable, so we want to know if something wrong happened. We can easily find out if what all the information coming in, and then can debug troubleshoot from there. So from that, we decided that we use StepFunctions. So StepFunctions actually fits very well with all these requirements, because StepFunctions is a serverless workflow service that provides a way to coordinate and manage all the flow of events in an event-driven architecture. So it's event-driven, so that's one of our requirements. So we just wanted an event that starts all the ingestion. So we one of our requirements is that with the current Fergus application, we don't want it to be calling synchronously this new system where we're going to ingest the PDF invoices. So so and then it fits perfectly well with the async nature of Amazon Textract. So Amazon Textract offers like a choice weight steps. So with the async nature, you start with a request to the Amazon Textract, then with a job ID coming from Amazon Textract, you then retry until you get the analysis report afterwards. Then we also wanted that from the Fergus application, where you start like uploading the PDF, we don't want it to be a synchronous request, so we want it to be triggered by an event. So in this case, with StepFunctions, we can trigger it via a Amazon event bridge. With StepFunctions as well, you can build apps quickly. So for each steps, there will be individualized services. So there will be individualized functions. You can have lambdas for each steps that someone can work, individually, so they can concentrate on the implementation instead of the actual flow of the entire, I guess, the entire service or the entire application. Then it's easier to do end-to-end testing and can easily track and monitor execution of workflows in real time. Then has built-in retries and error handling. So this one is a big plus as well. So we don't need to build into the implementation retry and back off logic. So this also it can control the flow between components and services. So you can have like choice or branching. So you can do the logic flow visually. So you don't have to think about, as part of your implementation, you have if conditions and everything. You can just visually have then control the flow of the logic between your functions. It's also highly scalable, and as mentioned earlier, it's fully managed, so you don't have to worry about availability, about scalability. So yeah. It also has integrations to almost all AWS services. So in our use case, we were using Lambda, Event Bridge, and then of course Amazon Textile. Moving on, so this is actually our final diagram with all the different states. So initially we had just like 3 lambdas. We were using like a built-in service called expense analysis, which is the Amazon Textile. Eventually, but as we were developing, we shifted to mostly Lambda because of some limitations in on those services. So just to explain all these steps or services, so the receive PDF invoice is the step that validates the actual file, the PDF. So we need to validate if this is actually something that we can process, or does it come from a valid source, or all those things. So it interacts with the S3. So it's actually triggered via an event bridge when something is put in S3. Then it starts the entire workflow, and the first step will be to receive PDF invoice. The second step then is once we validated the start expense analysis, then sends a request to the Amazon Textile service to do the analysis of the PDF. Then, if you can see here, it then starts polling the Amazon Textile if the report is already ready. So you can see here there's a choice and then a wait. So if the report is not ready, then we do a wait for several seconds, then we try again. If it's still not ready, then we just keep on looping until when it's ready. Then we can then go on to the next step, which is to parse the report from Amazon Textile. Then from there, then we transform it to a shape or a JSON format that is saved as part of the Fergus application. So we send it to an endpoint in the Fergus application. The logger here is actually a kind of like a it's kind of like a catch-all for all errors, and also it does dual function of logging to CloudWatch. So we set up like an alert where if there are errors, then we have a threshold or anything, then we get alerted automatically. And then we also have this audit where we log certain certain states of the invoice in DynamoDB, so it can be viewed in the application of what happened to the file that was uploaded or anything. So yeah, that's the workflow that we ended up with. And then this is another view of the workflow. So you can see the different steps. So most of them are Lambda, and you can see all the small things here are actually the catch and retry blocks, steps that you can define what errors that you can retry on. So this works perfectly well with, especially if the Lambda is not ready, then you can actually retry on that step automatically, and then you can have also define back off logic there easily. So it doesn't need to retry every time. You can specify like, okay, retry after 1 minute. Then if it still fails, you can retry another 10 minutes later on, and up to several times. Then moving on, so I guess the next one is the learnings coming from this implementation. So we found out that Event Bridge is our first step that triggers all the workflow. And we found out that there are filter limitations. So if you define like a filter saying it's a put object in S3, and you define like a suffix, you can only define once. If you want to define like a suffix and a prefix, it only gets the one of those. You can do multiple on a certain you can do multiple filters on a certain action. We also found out like S3 metadata perks. So we were using metadata for the objects that we upload, the files. We found out that if you do like Pascal case or camel case in your attributes that you add, it S3 actually converts them all to lowercase. So we were having problems like, why don't we get all these attributes when we read the S3 metadata? Because they were already converted to lowercase. So those are some things that we just found out by implementing. Step function input output limit. So there's actually a limit on the, so every step has an output for the next step, and the next step will receive it as an input. So there's actually a hard limit of 256 kilobytes for each step. So if you remember previously, we had the get expense analysis. We eventually used a lambda function instead of just the one of the services for. There's actually a get expense analysis service that you can use, but because of the report coming back from TextTrack is so big, it goes over the limit of the output. So eventually what we did was that when we receive the report, we save it to S3, and then the next step will just read that from S3 so we can parse it from the report properly. So that's what happened. That's why we ended up using a lambda. The next one is the step function handling of exceptions. So we found out that if you use the reply, from the lambda, if you can actually do a reply like HTTP reply like 200, 404, 400, like all those things, or 500. The step function doesn't really recognize those HTTP status codes. So what we found out is that you have to throw the exception, and then before the step function can recognize, oh, if there's an error, and it can then go to the whatever retry logic that you have. But if it's just a reply, it just goes through, and it doesn't recognize. If you say 404, it doesn't recognize that it was actually an exception or an error coming from the lambda. Then the Amazon TextTrack limitations. These are hard cap. You can actually do only 5 requests per second. So it's in the Sydney region. Actually, even in the US region, you can only do 5 requests per second. And then local dev testing limitations. So it's hard to do end-to-end actually, testing locally for the step function. You can do mocks easily, but end-to-end testing is a bit hard. We tried using local stack, but local stack doesn't have all the Amazon TextTrack services, so you have to implement them like a function as well. So it takes a lot of I guess some workarounds just to have end-to-end testing. So we ended up just your usual testing, unit testing, just the individual functions locally, and then then we just do once you've got the workflow running, it's easy to test it and actually in the cloud. So what else? I think that's all that I have. Next one, demo. So I guess we'll do some demo. I don't know how to share this one. I think I'm sharing. I think I need to stop the share of PDF ingestion. Find the where is it? There's something I can show you. So locally you can, the Amazon actually has a visual visual you can view the workflow in a visual diagram, and the output of that is like a JSON formatted language, which they call.
Sorry, I'm gonna turn off the light. Just
Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry. So it's called Amazon State Language, and it looks like this. And in Visual Studio, you can actually view it this way. So you can preview the flow, the diagram in Visual Studio. And hang on, I'm gonna show you. Where's my? Sorry, it's kind of rearranged. It's gone. Hang on. So the other steps, and it's now waiting for the report coming from TechStrack. Then maybe for after a short while, it will continue on. There we go. And then it saves it to persist the information to the application there. And you can check into each step, and then you'll see like information of the input data coming in and the output data for the next step. So you can easily see everything. Everything is like, all the information is in the step function, so you can easily troubleshoot the bug. And each step also has its own logs. So the Lambda has its own logs. So everything's there. The step function itself has its own logs. So, and then all steps has its own like transition. So you can see all of them here. So it starts with the execution, then started, and then goes to the next step. Everything will be here. Yep, and I think that's it. So going back to the presentation. So some key takeaways. So Amazon TechStrack actually is quite limited, as we have learned. So it works most of the times, but sometimes it's quite inconsistent. So we found out like there's a PDF where there are 5 line items. You can easily identify them, but sometimes they miss one line item, and we don't know why. So those are some things that we found using Amazon TechStrack. On StepFunctions, it's quite a very powerful tool, and it's a cheap way to do event-driven architecture. So using orchestration, so it's quite good because it's fully managed, so you don't have to worry about logging, observability, scaling, availability. So everything's in there. There's a built-in retry and back off, so you don't have to implement all those things. And then it's event-driven, so everything is loosely coupled. All the services are loosely coupled. So when you implement it, it's very fast. So everyone can work on each individual functions. So you don't have to step in each other's toes, and then you can just easily visualize how the flow works, and easily troubleshoot. And that ends the presentation. I hope you got something from it. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question. So how long it takes to the first Lambda to read the file in S3, because you said it's quite big. So my question is there any improvement? So once, let's say, the first Lambda reads the file from S3, and there is an issue on the second step, so does it copy the file, the extracted file, to S3, or need to read all the file again?
The PDF file is not the problem. So the way it works that we don't read the PDF file. So the PDF file is dropped, and then it triggers. We just validate the information on the metadata coming from the object, an S3 metadata, and then we send it to TechStrack, the PDF file. So TextStack is the one that parses for us the PDF. The report coming back is the one that's big. It's an JSON formatted report, and it sometimes exceeds to 56 kilobytes.
Yeah.
So instead of forwarding it as an output to the next step, we actually save it as a file, so that the next step then can just read it, and we don't have limitations on the file size anymore on the 56 kilobytes.
So if something happened during the process, it goes to the S3 bucket again, or to the Textra?
On which part, like?
I don't know, the second part or the third part?
No,
The second part is the Textra, right?
So the text track, normally you don't get issues in text track except for like it's busy, because you only have that hard cap of 5 transactions per second. But we handle that on the retry. So on the retry of that step, we have like an error of too many requests, and then it will just retry on that again on that step. So, and we have back off. So for that particular error, we have a back off logic where, hey, if you have that, then we probably have to wait like another 20 more seconds before we retry. So we've handled it in that way. But in terms of report, TextStack normally, we haven't had an instance where TextStack doesn't give back a report. It always gives back a report. Yeah. The only thing we found out is that the reports are sometimes inconsistent. So
you spend a lot of time on reading the report, right?
no, not
Because
necessarily. It's JSON formatted. So
Okay.
the report is JSON formatted, so it's easy to parse. So the fields are already there. So it's an actual expense report. So it's the fields are predefined by TextTrack, and we just look for those fields.
I'll turn on the light then.
Yeah.
I remember you had like questions yourself or not?
What's that?
Were you
Yeah. Is there?
Yeah. So you said that inconsistency that you have. How do you deal with that inconsistency?
So the way we dealt it is that we pass it on to the customer.
Oh,
We just say that, hey, the totals are not
Yeah.
doesn't match. So can you check the original file and then just edit it manually?
Okay.
So because it's a limitation in TextStack, even if we retry it, it will have the same result.
It does the same result, is it?
Yeah.
Even? Oh, okay.
One thing that we found out during our RFC between using Google Document AI or Amazon TextTrack, the Google Document AI actually does like a retraining of the model for all the invoices you pass, but Amazon TextTrack doesn't do that. So, but they're more expensive. It's like 10 times more expensive. So yeah.
There was a talk last month at the Auckland GoLang meetup talking about processing and generating PDFs. So this is quite nice follow-up. Where they talked about sterilization of the PDF documents because they could contain like malicious code and software. Right. Are you sterilizing the documents?
Actually, that's one of our to-dos. So we don't do like virus checks or anything.
Yeah.
So
they did some nasty stuff at that meetup. So yeah.
So it's something that's in our to-dos. So for now, we're not. We haven't done that. So yeah. Any more questions?
You said there was a limitation on the number of events you could have per second on TextTrack.
Yeah.
Is that per region or is that globally?
It's actually per region, but they're the same.
So
it's 5 transactions per second.
So you could theoretically have the same orchestrator deployed to 2 or 3 regions in around, like, let's say we're doing Sydney, Melbourne, when Auckland comes up, potentially Auckland or Brisbane, if that's a region, I'm not sure. And then you could potentially run that in 3 different regions.
Yeah, we haven't had problems yet so far, so I guess the load is not that high hitting that. And it's an async service, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So you actually don't wait for it to, so you don't get timeouts. You just wait for it to finish.
So what was it just something you discovered, or did it lead to some errors during development?
No, it's actually we knew from the start. There's a hard cap.
Okay. So it was just like when you were initially building up the solution, you knew that was the limit of the solution.
Yeah, and what we discovered though is the actual error coming back.
Yeah.
Which we then added on our retry. So the error of, I think it's kind of like a 429, like too many requests.
Yeah.
Then,
Interesting.
So the retry and backup is has the lambda function. It's more like a infrastructure setting. Like how do you specify them?
it's not part of the lambda. It's part of the step function. So you define it on the step host step. So I mentioned earlier that we when we discovered like on the lambda when we tried to just reply with HTTP errors like the status codes, the step function actually doesn't recognize those. So that's why we have to throw an exception coming from the lambda for those to be.
So what I'm trying to say is, so it's not defined like in the lambda code itself, but like these step function settings.
Yeah. It's on the, you define it on the visualizer, the
Right.
graphical
It's
visualizer.
not the-
Yeah. It's also in the JSON, the AS of the Amazon State language. So you define it as part of that specification.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more questions?
I got a question. You mentioned that you had a constraint with the filtering.
Yeah.
Did you overcome that, or is it something that you just have to deal with?
Yeah, it's something you have to deal with. So if you're gonna trigger it from S3, S3 has loads of multiple, you can define multiple triggers from S3, but from event bridge and you try to filter, you only get one. You get one for each type. So our type is just put object. So we only get one for that. We don't have other types of trigger. So that's why we just designed that we just put it in one bucket, and then luckily we are only after PDF, so we just said suffix of PDF, so it works for us.
Okay. But if you were to have multiple suffix, I guess, different files,
Yeah, it would be.
like CSV or PDF, then you have.
You could probably then handle it on your first step. So you do the validation there.
So would you do like a choice on that case?
Probably more of just a validation. You probably have a list of known files that you want to handle, and then if it doesn't fit on those lists, then you just throw an error. You reject the transaction. Any more questions? I have some swags here, so if you've been, I hope you've been paying attention and learned something, but some swags to give away. So I have some questions, and then someone can get this for the swags. There will be some shirt and some caps here. So,